Aloha, and welcome to SUP FM, the podcast for stand-up paddleboarders everywhere. So with no further ado, let's get out on the water and on with the show. Here are your hosts, Nick and Simon.
Hi everyone, and a warm welcome back to the SUP FM podcast as we complete the second half of the third season. I think I got that right. And today's interview is with Caz Dawson, and Caz is a paddler from North Wales, and this interview is with Nick, who recorded it back in December. Now, you might have noticed that we haven't heard from Nick in these introduction sections on the podcast for quite some time now. And that's because he's been working very hard on a new business opportunity, a very exciting one in Portugal. And in light of that, he's made the very difficult decision to step away from the podcast for the foreseeable future. So it's a great loss to the pod and a great loss to myself, and the workforce here at SUP FM Towers, our thrusting HQ, has been slashed by 50%. But I just wanted to say a couple of things. First, to our listeners, to say that we both massively appreciate all of the support that you've given us over the last 9-10 months since we reactivated the podcast. And I can't tell you how much of a difference that makes in terms of motivation and getting these episodes out. So I hope that I can continue getting your support as we move on through 2021. And the second thing really to say at this point is just a massive, massive thank you to Nick for all the hard work and everything he's done over the years. And also on a personal note, tempting me out in front of the mic. So mate, it's been an absolute joy working with you. And I'm sure we'll get you back on in a cameo appearance at some point in the future, hopefully soon. So, here's Nick's final official interview with Caz Dawson. I hope you enjoy it.
Hey Caz, how are you doing? Welcome to the SUP FM podcast.
Hi Nick, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, we had a bank holiday today in Portugal, and I've been working all day, which is a bit nuts, but I'm supposed to take time off. It's been a beautiful day here, sun shining. What's it like over there in North Wales? Are you in North Wales?
Yes, I'm up in, it's actually been sunny North Wales today, one of those crisp winter days, which actually I quite enjoy.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think when the sun shines in the UK, it's the most beautiful country in the world. It's stunning, isn't it?
No, it is for sure, and particularly my little corner of northeast Wales. It's absolutely beautiful, and we're so blessed to have some lovely countryside right on the doorstep.
Yeah, so tell us about your countryside, because long time ago, when I was a little child, I went on the canals along the Llangollen Canal all the way to, what's that big aqueduct called? The Ponte-Silta, I think it is.
Ponte-Silta Aqueduct, yeah. Yeah, and I was actually, funny enough, because I've just sort of been doing a bit of paddling with a few different groups recently, and actually on Saturday I met up with a British canoeing ambassador and paddled over the aqueduct on Saturday afternoon. Yeah, they're quite strict though now. The days of being able to stand up and paddle over it are now over, and unfortunately you've got to get off your board and drag it.
Oh no, so you dragged it all the way over the aqueduct, because it's quite a big aqueduct, isn't it? I mean, it's quite a few hundred meters, surely.
It is, yeah. I don't know I can't remember the height exactly, but back in the day, it was one of the biggest structures in the world, probably going back sort of 250 years ago when Thomas Telford originally built the bridge.
Wow. So what other areas, I mean, do you paddle on the canal all the time, or are there rivers and lakes and ocean that you paddle on?
To be fair, I really enjoy mixing it up. So particularly this time of year, trying to find sort of regular water that's easy and close to get to, we always sort of turn back onto the canals just because it's really good. I paddle midweek with a head torch, so it's pretty safe. You can get on and off easily, and generally there's a pub nearby. But I'll paddle everywhere and anywhere. So recently I've spent time in the sea and time on sort of some of the lakes and things. But yeah, I really sort of try and mix it up and look for different places to keep adding that bit of variety. So yeah.
Did you mention there's a pub nearby? So that's vital for a paddling session.
Yeah, for the paddling sessions this time of year, you definitely need a little something to warm you up. And yeah, when I was out last week, we all sort of congregated for a quick drink. But yeah, with COVID restrictions now in Wales, they're bringing a ban to that actually. All pubs have to shut at 6 o'clock after Friday. So I don't know how much longer that's going to carry on for.
Well, yeah, we just locked down here in Portugal as well, so that's sort of putting a bit of a damper on everything. But we're all trying our bit to adhere to the rules and try and get through this winter. So hopefully, but obviously, Isaac, I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this question, but why are there so many fascinating paddlers from Wales? Because there are tons of interesting paddlers. I mean, we interviewed Sian Sykes, who paddled all the way around Wales. And have you met tons of incredibly interesting paddlers?
Well, I've met Sian on a couple of occasions, and I've been fortunate enough to paddle down the Menai Straits with Sian. To be honest, I think it's the country, the environment. It breeds interesting, outdoorsy paddler kind of folk, and I think having such variety and environments on our doorstep just encourages people to get out. And if you've got that, it's a real incentive to become a better paddler, a more interesting paddler. And yeah, there's lots of people about that have set up SUP schools that are doing really great things on whitewater. It's just a really exciting place to be.
Yeah, whitewater's a big thing in Wales, isn't it? Because you've got tons of rivers and rapids, have you? What's the best run?
Well, probably for me it would be around Llangollen and sort of picking up some of the paddling around sort of Mile End. I've got back, was it last year? I can't remember now. I entered my first whitewater competition on the River Dee, which when I was out the week before, and I'd only just actually started paddling whitewater, it was, I think, 2 on the gauge. And when I turned up for my competition, it was 10. But I had to sort of do a bit
what does
of
that mean?
It was high.
Oh, you mean the 2 meters?
Yeah,
2 meters. Okay, so it's 2 meter thing and it was up to 10 meters. So it was really high water flow. Flowing fast.
Unbelievable the amount of water that was flowing through, but I just had to grow a pair and jump on the river.
Don't people get very concerned about strainers, when the water is really high like that? Because it can be really dangerous.
It can, and actually I was out paddling over the weekend, and even though it was a bit further down the Dee, there was a couple of bridges there, and there was, there's a lot of debris that kind of backs up, and there was a few logs which had sort of jammed and things are sort of blocked around, and you do see that quite often, and particularly the Dee, it can sort of fluctuate quite a lot in a sense. It can rise and fall over a matter of a few days quite considerably, and you do seem to get quite a lot of debris, so you've just got to be a little bit careful of obstacles and different things.
Have you had any scary moments when you've come across submerged hazards or the like, or floating dead bodies or anything?
Well, I could recall some stories from previous days when I was over in Africa, but no, probably on the Dee, I've been quite lucky. I've seen a few dead sheep that have passed me on a few occasions actually this summer. What else have we seen on there? There's some actually quite weird and wonderful little finds. So I actually bumped into some divers beginning of this year, and they were sort of scouring the riverbed because there'd been a really big flood that had gone through. And where I was actually paddling, that there used to be an old Victorian sort of pier, really, where they took people on boat rides and things. And the divers came out and gave me a potted meat little jar, which I went home and cleaned up. But this beautiful bottle, which held sparkling water from around 1870 from Chester, which is the town sort of just up from me. So I cleaned all of those up and they're on my kitchen window, but that was something that I took from that SUP journey. And I also finally got to know how deep the river was as well.
So I saw that on your Instagram, actually. I saw those 2 bottles. I thought, wow, that was so cool when I was doing a bit of research for this episode. But if you could, let's go back a little bit. So obviously you went to school in North Wales and then you did a BSc in environmental science. What did you do after that?
What did I do after that? That's a good question.
Because you mentioned Africa and I'm like wondering what happened there. So.
Well, actually my background. So I've always been involved with rural living in a sense. I've grown up in the countryside. I've had a very close affinity with young farmers, outdoor sort of pursuits in a sense. And I was really fortunate back in, it probably would have been 2007, I was awarded a scholarship to travel out to Zambia, and I had 6 weeks over there studying export agriculture, so actually working on the farms that produce the likes of cut flowers and stir-fry vegetables for supermarkets over in the UK. So when I was over there, I managed to get a run in on the Zambezi, managed to raft down there. So that was awesome.
That was the first river I ever did as well, and it just got me hooked for life. Yeah, it was brilliant. I became a river guide after that, actually, in South Africa. But yeah, the Zambezi is next level, isn't it? It's amazing.
Oh, it was insane. And I think the water at that time was some of the rapids. They were sort of saying they were sort of grade 5 touching grade 6, and even the guys were getting out walking around it. And I came out of that boat a couple of times, and I'd say out of everything I've done in my whole life, they were the 2 occasions I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
It's
well, people
pretty
have
hairy,
died there.
really.
Yeah, people have died there. I mean, they got stuck in whirlpools below rocks and got sucked in. But how did you feel on the first rapid when you're just below the falls? And you're floating towards the first, and you can't see anything, and it just sort of goes all glassy, and there's a bit of steam coming off, or water vapor. And I was just, wow, that was pretty exciting feeling. We actually interviewed a guy, Bertrand van den Berg, who went down on a stand-up paddleboard. He went down the Zambezi. So that was quite an amazing trip as well. I think he was the first ever to do that. But I think
I have to say, actually, I saw some of his videos online, and it just blew my mind away from going down actually in a raft in a sense, and then seeing what he was doing on a paddleboard. Actually to run any of those rapids on a paddleboard was totally insane. And some of them he almost sort of carried it off, and yeah, it was just nuts, absolutely nuts to do that.
He invited me to go along as well, and I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. Thank you. I'm kind of glad I didn't go. So in 2018, it appears you went back to school and did a ton of work with marketing diplomas, coaching, facilitation stuff, and then certificates with British canoeing and the WSA. What brought about that sudden change? Or was it a sudden change?
It probably was a sudden change, actually. And on reflection, the company I've been working for previously, so actually I'm in a relatively new role. I've just picked up a new job 12 months ago. And so they call it a 7-year itch when you're actually with a company 7 years. And then it's sort of time to move on. And I think I just got to a point where I needed to do something for me again, really. So I've really enjoyed sort of work around coaching and mentoring. I love inspiring and working with others, with younger people. So that kind of happened. And then paddleboarding came into my life. I was actually I used to love horse riding. I had a horse and rode competitively for many, many years. But I lost my horse in a bit of a freak accident. And then I was sort of at a loss, really, in a sense of what do I do? And I probably had 12 months where I dilly-daddled a bit and dipped in a few different things, and then found paddleboarding. And then, yeah, the rest is history. In a sense, I've sort of looked then at, what quals I can get. And I've actually got my adventure guide assessment in 2 weeks' time. I think it's on the 19th. So
through the WSA, the Water Skills Academy.
Through the WSA, yeah. So I've got a river run. So I was actually out last weekend doing a recce for that run. But
I've got a certification through them as well. They're great. But let's go back into how you said paddleboarding came into your life. Can you remember the exact time when you first jumped on a board?
I can, and I know Llangollen seems to be a reoccurring theme through this conversation, but actually it was about 18 months ago now on the canal in Llan. I decided to just go along and sort of have a go. They have like a SUP social evening, so it was with Anting and Stand Up Paddleboard UK, and
with a local club.
Yeah, a bit of a local sort of social club, and I didn't have any kit. I just turned up in my trainers and a pair of leggings, and off I went. And it was, I think, just the inspiration of paddling with Ant, who is an amazing guy. When you see somebody on the water, and what he can't do on a board, and particularly on white water, is he's just insane. And there was just something in me which clicked, and I thought, you know what, this is for me. It's cheaper than a horse.
Yeah.
And probably easier.
You don't have to feed it.
You don't have to feed it. You don't have to get up every morning. And the rest was history in a sense. So I sort of went along and did a few of these paddles on a Wednesday evening, and it grew from there. And I took some advice and really stretched out to try and get the best board I could buy and the best paddle. And I had this like piece of advice in my head at the time, which is make sure you can buy the best paddle you can afford. Don't buy anything cheap or nasty, because it doesn't matter what board you've got. If you've got a cracking paddle, it'll look after you. And I still paddle with that paddle.
That's really good advice. That's really good advice. Yeah. That's brilliant. Because I think a lot of people really labour on the subject of trying to get a board, and they look at every single board, and then they get all involved in the detail. And it doesn't really matter what board you get in the beginning, as long as it's it's a pretty much an all-round thing and you can stand in it. I think because then once you get into it, then you can find out where your passion lies. So what board did you actually buy in the beginning?
Well, I actually bought a Fanatic Diamond Air Touring 11.6. I think it's about 31 inch wide. And that board still is as sweet as a nut, and I still paddle it, most weeks. I absolutely love it. And we were actually talking the other day about having a bit of a board sort out and, maybe selling some and upgrading some and doing a few different things. But whatever, that board doesn't go anywhere. I love it.
You're hanging on to it forever.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, so you messaged us on Instagram and said the following. I'd love to share my whistle-stop journey from a complete newbie in May 2019 to launching my SUP Lass school in January 21. And I was a bit confused. I was like, well, have you launched your school or not? But you're only launching it in January next year, right?
Yeah, so I'm behind the scenes at the moment, doing everything I can to get things set up. But yeah, it's something I want to run in a sense parallel to my day-to-day job or my day job, and sort of look at how I could get out over some weekends and midweek and things sort of throughout the summer. But yeah, I'm just in the process now. I've been in some conversations and I've just sorted out my accounts and stuff in terms of getting hold of some boards and buying a small fleet. And then, yeah, looking at really putting some packages together. But I'd very much like to focus on, I wouldn't say complete newbies, sort of looking at potentially women that have, come into the support in a sense, that maybe need a bit of extra coaching around their confidence or overcoming anxieties, and trying to get them out really on some slightly longer, river runs or building up some skill and technique bases with them. So that's what I'd like to do. And that's something which I feel, quite strongly and passionate about. And perhaps as well from a background, and I don't know if you know this, Nick, but I used to run a sort of wedding and an event catering business, almost like incorporating a bit of food and drink into the whole element as well. And there's a few ideas that I've got banding about. So
that sounds like a great idea. SUP dinners. I know I was interviewing a lady in the USA, and I think she was based in the Ozarks or somewhere around there. And she used to do a sup and a coffee every morning, and then they would go out and have a sup and then have a coffee as well. But doing a dinner or a lunch or something as well would be great to incorporate that. I think that'd be quite novel. It'd be a wonderful idea. But there's it seems to be a very popular recipe, focusing on women. Whereas like She Sups in Australia, we just interviewed her. And then I think there's something in the UK called She Paddles as well, which is a very similar thing. So it's great because it's wonderful for ladies to get out together and not have that big, horrible, overriding male influence, isn't it?
I still enjoy paddling with men, but yeah, I think there's just something about seeing those little wins, those little achievements. I'm really sort of putting that confidence and getting women in a different place. So yeah, I'd love to be able to do a little bit more of that and give something back.
And how about taking your corporate groups out and doing some facilitation on stand-up paddleboards? Did that go down well in the boardroom?
I actually threatened my team for Christmas this year, because we've obviously got everything's got to be social distance and outdoors and everything. So I said, don't worry. I said, I can sort out some boards. How about we all go out? And the answer was no.
No, it's full stop.
Yeah.
So in your mind, what did you reckon the first steps were to take? Because I did a similar route back in, 2014, I think, when I started my stand-up paddle school. And, I thought, okay, first thing I have to do is just go and get to know the area as well as possible and find out the best spots for people to paddle in, which it sounds like you've done. And then I had to go and get all the certifications, and then I have to go to do all the government stuff. So what steps are you taking to get your SUP school off the ground?
Well, for me, in terms of paddling, I was just fortunate enough last year. I was doing a lot of training for long distance races that actually were cancelled. But through that process, I managed to cover an awful lot of the rivers, the lakes, the canal and the coast. And again, I'm just really fortunate from where I am, 20 minutes in a direction, that there's amazing different bodies of water that we can access for all different conditions, really. So in a sense, I think we've got, some good areas that we can explore. I've also been in contact with actually a local outdoor education centre that they've actually got a private lake. So I'm just sort of in talks with them at the moment to see whether that is something that I could use for some of the skill kind of work. And then, to be honest, I've just got to say a huge, huge thank you to WSA. They've been amazing. And I've sort of gone with them, and I've done sort of my adventure guide stuff, which I've got an assessment for in a couple of weeks' time. So there's no pressure there. I've got to pass, really. I've got to make sure that all my planning and my recce stuff's all spot on. I've done a little bit of shadowing as well. So I've actually been out with another coach, again through WSA, and sort of shadowed some of the instructor courses that they were running. So I found that really helpful. But I think as well, I don't want to just sort of stand on my own 2 feet. I think if I can work with other people in the industry, and in a sense, I'm not in there to make, thousands of pounds and make my millions. I think for me, it's something to go out. It's complete opposite ends of the spectrum to what I do day to day. And if I can inspire some people, if I can give something back, if it improves my well-being as well, I think it's all a really positive. So I'd love to, if I could work with other people that are in the industry, if I can offer, a bit of help, a bit of coaching, if I can be a stand-in instructor. I'm just there really willing to do what I need to do. But for me, it just gives me that little bit of balance and variety in my life too.
Yeah, and you sort of touched on stress relief, almost like paddling as a stress reliever. And obviously there's been a lot of focus with COVID and everything for people's mental health. What do you feel that stand-up paddle can offer people regarding mental health?
Well, probably if I describe it how it is for me, it probably is quite similar to other people that paddle. But paddling gives me personally an opportunity to have an empty head. And we all have these like crazy lives, and we've got all these sort of conflicting interests and stresses and strains and family and work and finance. All these things are constantly, fighting and trying to take our attention. And one thing I can say is every time I step on the water, within 5-10 minutes, I have an empty head. And I've spoken to a couple of other people that I've paddled with, and they say the same. You focus on you're bored, your surroundings, you take everything in. And having those moments in the current, climate and the hustle and bustle that everybody constantly sort of tries to run through really is so valuable, that time just to mentally switch off. And I think that is a real gift that paddleboarding can give.
I agree. I mean, those early mornings, just getting out. I love paddling in the morning because obviously the conditions are the best. And it's just so beautiful to get out into a still morning and just break the water with your board. And it's really incredible. But have you heard of the whole blue mind concept? Because for those who don't know it, it mostly stemmed from a book written by Wallace J. Nichols in 2014. And he attempted to throw some science at why we love the ocean and water so much. And I don't know, I mean, I think when you're out paddling, you're going to have a good time. You're going to be mindful, whether it's on it. But also there's another element of it. If you're going out and you're playing rugby or football or something and you're really enjoying it, that's going to give you a sense of elation and a sense of peaceful and mindfulness as well. Because when you're in a rugby scrum, you're not thinking about your grocery list. so I don't know how much that holds water, that whole blue mind concept, but I just know that that's my little piece of heaven wherever I am in the water. So hopefully it is for you and everybody else. I wanted to ask you something, Caz. When you said you were paddling around, you mentioned something about a long distance paddling. Have you done multi-day expeditions and things?
I've done a few overnighters on my local river, and I actually plan to do some more. I've got a few irons in the fire for next year. So I've done the whole bivvy bag, sleeping on a river bank. And
well, tell us about it. Where was it, and when did you go? Because were you on your own as well? Because I went on my own. It's quite an experience. It's quite different.
Well, I actually went with my partner, and it was actually, when was it? It was actually around, the first time we went out was over the longest day, so it was sort of middle of June, Midsummer's Day. And we'd had a beautiful couple of days and just decided, oh, bugger it, let's just throw everything in the car, jump in and see where we end up. So we jumped on the River Dee, which, again, it's not too overly exotic or far away, but do you know what? Or, they say, don't they, a sort of a change is as good as a rest, and to just go somewhere on your doorstep. And we paddled down. The weather just came in from nowhere. They hadn't even forecast this rain. We were looking on thinking, like, where's this come from? And we had the most torrential rain. And we'd probably paddled about 15-20 kilometres downriver. It was pitch black, and we had sort of no other option other than to pitch up. And we had our bivvy bags and these sort of squally winds that were coming through. So we were just sort of lying on the riverbank in our bivvy bags, absolutely soaking wet through. So I was trying to sleep all night with my arm to sort of keep the tarpaulin down. And then we sort of got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, feeling a bit cold and miserable, and carried on back to grab a coffee. So that was probably one of our first sort of overnighters. But we've done a couple more, and I've got sort of plans to do a few more longer sort of multi-day expeditions for next year. That's the plan anyway. But yeah, it's always good to be out.
Yeah, because I find those the most exciting things. And I've done a couple just on my own, actually, just cruising out, because we've got about a bunch of barrier islands here in the Algarve. And it's beautiful to paddle out those, even in winter when it's still and beautiful. And we don't get as much rain as you guys, so we don't have, hopefully, I've never had a rainy day when I've been paddling. But yeah, it's a really nice thing. I think we always try on the podcast, we always try and ask people to get out there and do it, because a lot of people just paddle. They go out for a couple of hours and then they come back and that's their thing. But going out for a night is a whole different ballgame. It just puts on a different perspective to things. And it sounds like your first night was a bit horrendous. So hopefully they'll be better from then on. But,
yeah. It's always interesting, actually, just having that little focus of like, how much kit can I actually get on the board? You know, what kind of ditch and what can I make do with? It's surprising what you can fit into sort of two dry bags, really. So yeah, that's good to live off the bare bones.
It is. It's amazing what you can put in a dry bag. You don't actually need much. I mean, we paddled all the way across the Algarve. It took us about 5 days, and we didn't take much with us. We just took, like one set of extra clothes and, food. And I always think, wow, what kind of food are we going to take with? And it's not a problem, really. I mean, just take some oats for breakfast and, some nuts for lunch. And it's weird. I don't ever get hungry. But we had a few restaurants along the way, which was quite fun. So it's kind of cheating. But another thing is that in stand-up paddleboarding, so many people use stand-up paddleboarding as a vehicle to promote other causes. Why do you reckon that is?
Well, I certainly think over the last sort of 12, 18 months, it's raised, its profile has raised hugely. So in a sense of, it's a lot more accessible. So perhaps where people are thinking they would have done a run or a cycle, paddleboarding seems to be sort of a go-to one. And, there's a lot of people at the moment I can think of that are, doing challenges or looking really for ways to sort of push themselves a little bit further. But I think it is probably linking back to some of those conversations we've already had around sort of mindfulness, well-being, thinking about what it can offer. And it's certainly, in terms of, Instagram, things like that, it's really been picked up as an activity really that people want to be associated with. There's sort of celebrities that do it. There's a lot more of a profile on TV as well. So it probably has just sort of picked up, in a sense, a bit more of a vibe to what perhaps cycling and running's been. But yeah, a lot of people are choosing the SUP as a way to promote challenges.
And I think it's a way to, what's the word, almost not substantiate, but if you go out and you want to have an adventure, it might feel like a bit of a fun thing. And if you throw a charity on the back of it, you can actually do some real good. And it does raise a lot of awareness. Are you following anybody's adventures at the moment or recently?
Who have I followed? Well, actually, there was a chap back end of the summer that was paddling. I can't remember the name of the route now, but it was sort of a 300-400 mile loop, closed loop, which sort of encompassed the River Severn, and then it went back around in the sort of canals. And it's some historic sort of canoe route from the sort of 1860s, 1870s, I think, that this challenge. So there was a gentleman that was paddling that, and that was around sort of mental well-being. And I joined him for a sort of 14 sort of kilometre stretch.
Oh, right. Do you remember his name? Because I'm sure we followed him as well on SUP FM.
I'd have to dig it out. That's really terrible. But yeah,
putting you on the spot. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Put me on the spot. So there was that, and there's a lot around the sort of She Paddles initiative. So there's those that I've been following, and again, just seeing the traction in terms of engaging with women and getting them involved with water sports. And then there's the current challenge at the moment that's sort of been going on around the UK. I'm trying to think of his name. It's
Jordan
Wiley.
Wiley,
yeah.
Jordan Wiley.
So I've been dipping in, dipping out, and watching his adventures. But I was very disappointed to learn that he wasn't coming up through North Wales, because I was hoping that I could have jumped on the water or sort of met him part of the way. But yeah, he ended up sort of scooting around the whole of Ireland and going up. But hats off to him, this time of year to be doing a challenge like that.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the squalls and the winds and things that have come on through, and the conditions he's paddled in. It's absolutely insane, and I can imagine there'll be a hell of a party when he finishes. But
yeah. I mean, going through Scotland in the middle of winter is going to be really rough. I don't know how he's going to do it, but yeah, hats off to him. He's doing an incredible job. I think he's done 2,500 kilometers already. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's just insane.
It's amazing. Yeah. We were just about to interview him before he left, actually, and we couldn't make it happen because it was a little bit too late. But hopefully, we'll get him on the podcast sooner or later. If you were going to do a long expedition, where would you do it?
Where would I do it? For me, I've been really fortunate actually. And in my job, I've travelled to a lot of places, and there's a couple of places that sort of jump back out to me. But for me, Norway really. To have more time to explore Norway and some of the fjords and to some of the wilds around there, but also as well to get back to Iceland, and a circumnavigation of Iceland would always appeal to me.
That sounds very long. Have you checked out how long would it be? Sounds like a good idea.
It sounds like a good idea, and actually one that I have looked at, and I have taken this one more seriously, Nick. Actually, I did look at. I've actually got some quite close sort of links back to the Isle of Man. And I spent a lot of time over there when I was a bit younger, particularly with like my young farmer days. And I'm eyeing it up. I think the Isle of Man circumnavigation is actually doable. I know there's some good tides and currents and things that I need to contend with and plan around. But yeah, if you get a good weather window, and I think some good planning, I think there's something there that could be done and actually quite realistic. So I've actually been working with a guy at the moment, a chap called Dave from Aquaterra, and he's been really helping me, and he's going to offer to sort of try and do a bit of coaching with me in terms of some long distance stuff for next year. So watch this space.
Watch the space. Yeah, it sounds exciting. But the Isle of Man sounds amazing because I know there are like heavy tides around there. But obviously those conditions, if you know them well enough, you can use them to your advantage, can't you?
Yes, you can. And I was actually fortunate a few weeks ago to have some good days at sea. And actually, I've got some more training coming up in a few weeks again, just looking at nav work, out on the coast. And yeah, I hadn't realised actually how much you can play some of those currents to your advantage in terms of getting that bit of extra speed and navigating sort of around headlands and different things, and sort of just playing with the tides really and working with that to your advantage. So that's something I'm relatively new and inexperienced with, but I'm learning at the moment and hopeful that I can be out and spend a bit more time in those environments.
Yeah, and I think it's just observing the water as well as it goes and learning to read the water and just watching what happens. It's quite amazing because so many people go out and they're just oblivious of it all, especially learners. I mean, when I used to take out learners, they would stop paddling and then think that they would stop. But obviously the tide's carrying them and the wind's carrying them, so they don't realize how that affects. But obviously learning to read the water is a vital thing. But yeah, so are you all on target for January 21 to launch SUP Lass?
Yes, I need to get a wiggle on. There's the few little things I just need to sort of iron out, but yes, all in all, I think we're on track. There's my website and stuff that I need to just sort of finish getting sorted, and the usual stuff with accountants and everything you need to do really to try and do it properly. I've had some conversations in regards to boards, and there's a few things there that need to just get ironed out, but. Yeah, all in all. Have you decided
on your boards?
Yeah, and I've actually been having really good conversations with Fanatics. So
okay,
so I think to begin with, I'm going to be looking at getting four boards, and for me, it'll probably be some touring boards. So actually, something that does give a bit of capability in terms of some river runs, or certainly out at sea as well. That's got a little bit more than just a real beginner's board. And then, going for something sort of 31, 32 inch that kind of offers a bit of stability.
Sounds like I can get 4 of your own boards. 4 of those 11.6s to buy 31s.
Well, Joe, I've got a bit of, I have got a bit of a bias probably. But I think for that, for what I'm trying to do with people, I think they would be sort of perfect really in those kind of environments. And, they've stood me well and in terms of, sort of, advancing my skill and giving me the confidence. So I'm sure it'd do the same to other people as well.
Well, when those boards arrive, you must tag us on Instagram, and we'd love to look out and see those photographs that you get when the boards arrive, because that's always an amazing day. I remember when mine arrived, I was like, wow, this is great news. Things are happening.
Yeah, I think I'm more sweating actually of where I'm going to keep them, and I've got to have a bit of a think really in terms of home and is it a sort of a shed or yeah, I've got to just think of a bit of a setup here. I haven't put much thought into that at the moment. All my boards live in the spare room, but that is just not feasible.
I suppose you can stack 4 and put them in as a double bed. Huh?
Yeah.
I used to leave mine on the car for most of the summer actually, and it was like all strapped to the roof of my van. It was amazing. And, luckily I had a good, safe place to park them, but it worked well. But I'm sure you'll figure that out. And yeah, Caz, it's been amazing chatting to you and lovely to hear about your part of the world in North Wales there. Best of luck for your SUP school and keep in touch. We'd love to hear how it goes.
No, definitely, Nick. And no, I really appreciate your time to speak with me and with getting involved as well with SUP FM. So no, thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to SUP FM, the #1 podcast for stand-up paddlers wherever you are. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes. Until then, we'll see you on the water.